Welcome everyone to our webinar today titled Illuminating Collections Management System Requirements. My name is Emmanuel and I'm the Business Development Team Leader here at Lucidea. At Lucidea, we work with museums, archives, libraries, and other information professionals to provide better access and visibility to their collections, enabling them their diverse audience to access engaging with their collections. I will be moderating the webinar and your questions today, and with me obviously is our presenter Margot Note. Before we start, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. Number one, to make sure we get as much value as possible from this webinar in a short amount of time with Margot, our lines are muted at this moment. Number two, we encourage you to get the question and answer widget ready and type your question there so that we can address them later on. And lastly, for those of you who want to revisit this webinar again, rest assured a recording of this webinar will be posted at our website, lucidea.com. And the exact link will be on this page as well, lucidea.com/archivera/resources. And first, a few words about Lucidea. We are a relatively new knowledge management company focused on bringing you the best solutions from around the world, but we are comprised of a series of products and companies that have joined Lucidea over the last 30 years. These brands include well-known products such as Argus, Sydney, InMagic, Archivera, Eloquent, and QuadraStar. And obviously, we are here today because we want to learn more about the intricacies of an archival collections management system and how it would help your archival work. And well, you're in good hands. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about our speaker, Margot Note. Margot Note has over 20 years experience in information work in the national and international sectors. She's an author, a certified archivist, certified records manager, and information governance professional, and project management professional as well. Her credential definitely speaks volumes and for themselves. Before I hand off to Margot, I'd like to let everyone know Margot's book, The Archivist's Advantage, Choosing the Right Collection Management System, will be available in both hard copy and download, courtesy of Lucidea Press. I'm very excited for it to come out, and if you're not subscribed yet to our blog posts and such, there's another reason to be. We let our subscriber know first thing when an exciting thing like this comes out, a published book of value that is worth downloading or getting a copy of. Margot, it is nice to have you with us today. It is an honor to work with you again. We look forward to today's session. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome for today's webinar, Illuminating Collections Management System Requirements, Margot Note.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here today. So I want to talk about, first, we're talking all about requirements. And before we start working with the collections management system, we really have to dig into what our goals are for this project, our objectives, and our requirements. And we do that because each organization is unique. It's not like it's one system will fit everyone's needs. We want to find a system that really works with your particular requirements and your particular collections and work. Some organizations employ consultants to help kind of navigate this field to figure out what these requirements are and to get the project started, but many decide on the needs internally. And so I'm going to be talking about what those requirements might look like and really getting into the questions that you should be asking yourself when you're thinking about moving to a collections management system. So you want to gather the team and really see who you have on staff that can help you with this process. So that usually involves choosing a selection committee members. So that could be people like the budget decision makers. So those are the people that can say yay or nay depending on how much money that you want to spend, and they have the power to help buy systems. You also want to talk to and have people on your team that are colleagues with key experience. So those would be the people that would be using the system that really know the contours of your workflows and your processes for your collections. You're also looking for part of the team are potential power users. So these are people in your departments or your organizations that have perhaps used legacy systems in the past, or if you have kind of some ad hoc systems, Those are the people that are always in the collections, always trying to get that information. And if they're already power users now, when you have a new system, they're going to be power users as well. And their input, I think, is really important. And then, of course, you want to include those who will be affected by the new system. Part of the way that you can get buy-in for systems is that you don't want to foist something on people. You want them to be able to speak their opinions, to get their input, so that they feel that they're part of that process. So you want to listen to your colleagues, and that part of that is involving the right people early. You get a better idea of the needs that people have, that they're, in their work, and you really can start to talk about the pain points that are happening. So with older systems, legacy systems, if you have other ways of tracking collection information that maybe don't work as well anymore, there's a lot of pain points that have occurred in those processes. So we want to really listen to what those pain points are, because if we can resolve them with a new system, people are going to be happier and the work is going to be easier and less laborious. And then we also want to gain a holistic view of workflows, because a lot of times workflows in an archival setting is based upon the systems that you have. And some of it is kind of the way that you've always done things, perhaps based on whatever systems that you have. But we also want to dig into what those particular workflows are, because we can either replicate them in a new system or hopefully really improve them in the new system. Maybe we can automate parts of the process, or we can map that workflow into the way that the software is or the modules are on that particular collection management software, to be really helpful and to really support the work that you do rather than just giving you more obstacles in your path. So we want stakeholder buy-in. We want people to feel that they're part of the process, that they've chosen well, that their concerns have been listened to. And part of that is, listening to feedback, having people voice their concerns about what's currently happening or what they're looking for. And having that stakeholder buy-in really increases the adoption of a piece of software or a collection management system, and it assures the achievement of desired results. So I think what I've seen in the past and particular work environments I've worked in is that sometimes software or a particular type of technology has been kind of forced on the staff, and they don't feel like they've been part of the selection process and they haven't been listened to. So then you wind up having a very expensive piece of software that's not being used to its capacity. So having that buy-in helps people get energized about the collection management system, and then helps that adoption so much better. So when you have a committee, because you don't necessarily want these big decisions being made by one person, there has to be some clarity around committee work. So there tends to be a lack of clarity about who can make decisions if it's not completely transparent. So one of the major questions that I've seen with looking at projects like this is thinking about, does the authority to make decisions or selections rest with the department with the budget, or is it with the department whose requirements the CMS should satisfy? And some organizations, those two departments could be one, but they could be very separate based on your organization. And going into any type of selection committee work or looking in some deep work into figuring out what the requirements are, we want to make sure that there's an answer to this and some clarity around the decision-making process very early in the process. IT involvement is super critical as well. So people that work in IT have a unique view of the network. They can really understand the technical requirements. So if you're looking at particular systems, or if you're wanting to try different modules or different, maybe completely different ways of doing stuff involving IT, they can really give you some feedback about what can be done and what is possible. So, and they know, of course, about the integration with the infrastructure, applications, and workflows. They can give you a very good perspective, kind of an outside perspective from the user, to the support perspective, and that's a critical piece of this process. So you want to also think about experienced in-house staff. So assess your colleagues and see, are there functionality gaps that you'll need to fill? So sometimes that means you're hiring a consulting expert in some capacity, like a consultant, a consulting firm. You might have to have temporary employees, like project-based employees. If there's particular work that you need to do with, let's say, volunteers or interns or part-time staff, that's something to think about. And you want to look at think about particular set of skills and making sure that you have them internally. And having the staff that's really knowledgeable can help you advocate for institutional needs. So, if you're talking to vendors or kind of gathering information about collection management systems, you have people that are on your side that can really advocate for your needs and to understand what you have. And it also helps you stay organized with your project. So kind of piggybacking on the idea of stakeholder buy-in, we really want to have an institution-wide embrace of a collection management system. And I think that's really important because we want to involve staff across all departments. In a lot of organizations, the people that are going to be using the system a lot are going to be the archives department in some capacity. But you might have users and other departments or that have some input. And it's also underscoring the importance of the initiative and solidifies commitment. I think sometimes what happens is that when you are thinking about moving systems, it's a big project. It can be an investment in time and resources and money. And there's a culture shift that happens when you're moving to a new technology, a pretty major culture shift. And a lot of times all different types of people don't like change. We all don't like change. So I think having this embrace of this new system or thinking about this new system is important because it doesn't just put the weight of cheerleading for this project on a sole champion of the project. You want different people in different departments to care about this project. And the more that they care and are impassioned about it, the better results you have, and of course, the better buy-in and the more use you'll get out of the system. So you want to designate the project manager. So it's a person who's responsible for keeping the project on track. They manage the project work, but they don't necessarily perform the project work. And very small organizations or small departments, perhaps the project manager would do more of the nuts and bolts of the work. But think about a project manager as being like a traffic cop or air traffic controller, where they are keeping people on task. They're on top of communications and reporting and moving the plan and the schedule forward. And they're not necessarily doing that work themselves. And I should say too, Lucidea has been a champion of me talking about project management for a very long time. I have multiple blog posts about it. I have a previous book that I wrote for them about archival project management, and I've done some webinars in the past based on project management. So I can definitely talk about this particular slide for a very long time, but there's tons of resources if you want to learn more, particularly about how you can be an archivist and a project manager. You also want to find a project sponsor, and this is something that I will advocate forever. So a project sponsor is someone within the organization that has a certain amount of power. So they could be someone that was kind of in leadership at your organization, senior staff, a VP level, a president level, someone that has a lot of power. And they provide the resources and support, and they help enable the success of the project. They're also really good at conquering roadblocks, because with any type of project, there's going to be certain obstacles that happen. And having this project sponsor basically have your back is really important in moving the project forward and really smoothing that process. The project sponsor in this case really believes in and defends the business case, saying that we need a new collection management system. And this project sponsor stands behind the project rationale and the goals and what you're trying to achieve with this project. Communication is key. So as you're figuring out the requirements for a collection management system and kind of throughout the whole process of selection and installation of the system, you want to have regular meetings. So something that's not necessarily like, that's always on the calendar, that people know that there's continuing conversation. And so meetings, emails, calls, whatever way works within your organization, these communication channels addresses the questions, concerns, and problems that people have throughout the process. It also helps people meet milestones. So they, if you're talking to colleagues and saying, I need more time to process a collection, or this particular collection needs more metadata, or the scheme isn't working, or whatever problems that you have, the communication avenues are really helpful. And communication, of course, aids to complete the project on time, because you're saying, okay, I need more time, I need more resources, let's rearrange things. It's just being very open and accessible to your colleagues that are working on the same goal. Regular reporting happens throughout a project like this. So we want to document what's happening as the project progresses. And I think maybe I'm speaking from my own experience, but I know as archivists, we're doers. We like to do the work, we like to process, we like to just get things done and figure things out. And sometimes we don't take that step back to really document what we're doing. So of course, in a major project such as, thinking about a collection management system, there's going to be a lot of decisions and thought processes that are happening, and we're in the moment. So we, documentation just seems another thing to do because we all have it in our head. But I found, especially in my consulting practice, when I've worked with people that have had set up any type of database in the past, there's some questions that come up years later that people are curious about, and sometimes there's either no documentation or very little documentation, or that documentation is missing, and that piece is really important. So the regular reporting, it requires, noting the meeting contents and decisions that you're making, and then also distributing it to stakeholders. So depending on the type of stakeholders you have and the committee that you have, not everyone is going to be in those weekly meetings and may not be interested in being in kind of the regular communication channels, but they do need some type of update about what you're doing. So that's where I think regular reporting comes into play. So you want to also establish the scope of a collection management system and thinking about its requirements. You want to define the boundaries. So what is the system? What are we asking the system to do? What are we looking for? And having that scope avoids surprises and unrealistic expectations. I think sometimes people think that technology is the end all be all. And I think as archivists, we know that's not true, but sometimes people that are kind of removed from the day-to-day work think that, oh, you just need a software and you can get it done. So I think we have to be really clear about what that scope is and what those expectations are. So you ask yourself, what does the institution want to achieve? And who's providing input into the selection, and who has the authority to make decisions on figuring out what this work is. And then of course you want a project plan and phases. Again, I've seen this a lot where people jump into the work because they're excited about it, and they should be. This is a great, having a collection management system that is going to help your work improve is exciting. But I think we also have to take that step back and spend a little bit of time about planning and the details of each phase of this project. So what is the schedule that you're working with? And is it a realistic schedule? A lot of times institutional calendars will drive implementation timetables. So in that case, let's say you have to get something installed by a fiscal year or the calendar year, or you have some type of an event happening, or you want to launch at a particular time. And so sometimes those are external deadlines that may or may not be realistic. So you want to assess that to see if you can complete an implementation of the project in that time period. You also want to outline the project phases as you're moving forward and assign staff members the tasks and deadlines that they need. And you want to definitely document your goals and objectives of this project, the plan, and its phases. So interviewing stakeholders is the next piece of this process. So you're talking to staff about the requirements that they have. So these are users, perhaps, they're users of the collections. So perhaps they're legacy systems or other ways of accessing the collections. And you want to see, like, what has their experience been like? How do they expect to use the system? You know, what kind of information do they want to see that maybe that information isn't available now? And what features are they looking for in the new CMS? So I think, you know, from our perspective as archivists, we have a particular type of view. A lot of times we're looking at it, a collections management system from the back end, because that's where we spend most of our time. But some of those stakeholders might be used to using the system from the front ends, and that experience is really important too. So we definitely want to get their perspective. And interviewing the stakeholders can take kind of different routes. So you can, you know, send out a survey or a questionnaire. You can talk to people one-on-one or in more of a focus group setting. You can, you know, think about kind of sometimes even kind of segment out stakeholders. So a type of stakeholder. So you're not interviewing everyone, but you're kind of interviewing key people and those stakeholder groups. And then again, it's a way of really getting great feedback and really listening to people and really helping to promote that buy-in of whatever system you decide to use. And then this is a great, I always feel like, you know, this is a great opportunity to take an eagle eye view of the processes that you have. So a lot of times the way that we do our day-to-day operational work in an archives is based around technologies or particular constraints of the system. And sometimes it feels like, you know, we don't really question sometimes what we do. But when we're moving to a new system or even thinking about moving to a new system, we can really take that perspective and really think about what exactly we're doing. So you want to inspect the processes, policies, procedures, and structures that you use and see if it's working or not. You're looking at the types of collected data, the people who use the data, what they use it for, and the activities that make use of the data. So you're thinking about, you know, if we choose the system, like, you know, whatever requirements we have, you know, are we using it to its best capacity? Are we making sure that are there constraints purely because of the old way of doing things that we can question, or can we think about and be more open to better processes, faster ways of doing things, perhaps more automated ways of using this data and doing archival work? We also want to address the organizational structure. And again, that's looking at the management, the process, and the technology challenges that happen at the organization. And collection management systems, I think, are great because you can start to use that as a way to not force people to change, but to prod people to be more open to doing things differently and doing things better. And a part of that is asking a lot of questions. And again, there's kind of this idea, especially for people that have worked at an organization for a very long time that are used to working with collections in a particular way, we can start to question, you know, why do we do things this way? Why are things structured this way? Is it because we've decided this is the best way, or is it because of the limitations of previous processes we've had, for example? So how do you use this information? So what types of collections does the organization have? Who enters what information where, and when and what? Who has access to the information? And how is information retrieved and by whom and when and where and in what formats? So again, when you start thinking about, okay, how do people interact currently with the information that we have, that's going to be really helpful in helping us and get those requirements and to figure out the selection of a collections management system. And particularly the types of collections that the organization has, because that's going to be so important about how things are presented and how things are used. So let's say a system that has 19th century photographs, like if there's a collection that has 19th century photographs, that's going to present differently and be used differently than, let's say, something that has a huge amount of data sets that people want to access. And that will help some of that selection and to refine the requirements that you're looking for. What are our workflows? So how much time is spent in the workflow? So if you're processing a collection, what does that actually look like? What are the pain points? What are the, especially like the bottlenecks that happen in a workflow that we can help resolve? How complicated are the workflows? The workflows may very well be complicated, but are they like overly complicated? Are there redundancies in some of the work that we're doing? And where is time wasted? And I do want to be really clear here where, I talk about efficiency and effectiveness. And it's not saying that, archivists are some type of robots that we have to squeeze as much labor out of, that you have to process X amount of linear feet in X amount of time. I'm more thinking about, how can we make workflows, especially when looking for new systems, how can we make these workflows work for the archivist rather than against the archivist? And we can use our brain power, our skills, our expertise, our subject content knowledge to really, work at the upper end of our intellectual capacities than kind of wasting time and wasting effort doing more of the remedial work. And that's why I think thinking about workflows is really helpful to see, okay, how can we improve our workflows to make that stuff easier in a new collections management system? So how do we make collections accessible? So we've talked a little bit about the back end, what does the front end look like? So what's the size, the collection size and scope? And how will it be like work with other systems and be scalable? So sometimes, you might have a system that works with a very small collection. And that's why sometimes when I've talked about legacy systems or using not archival collection management systems. Let's say I've worked with things like Microsoft Word or spreadsheets or Microsoft Access, those types of systems may very well work with very small collections, but what happens when the collection grows? What does it look like when you have accessioned X amount over a certain amount of time or expanded the size and scope of your collections? Those systems that you've used in the past, ad hoc systems, legacy systems, might not work with these bigger collections. We also want to think about the current state of the website and how we can make information accessible by that website. So what does that, is it easy for users to access the information? I always advocate, because I have grad students in the Women's History program that are using archives for usually the first time. And there's a lot of I think when you're using an archives for a new time, sometimes it can be a little scary and overwhelming. So I always want to be mindful of like, how can we make the experience easier for new users or inexperienced users? How can we be welcoming to with these collections? And even though, Google is not the end all be all, a lot of people are used to searching for information in more of a Google-like way. So how can we replicate the ease of searching at archival websites? Just something to think about, because I think that's something that we're always looking to improve, I think. So how well do we work together? And so this is when, especially with a project like this, where you're thinking about, let's move to a new collections management system that helps us all. Are there silos of information in different departments? You know, if you're working at an institution, does the curators use one system, the archives uses another system, and the library uses another system? Is there any talking between that information? Is information shared between departments, and what information is shared and what information is not shared? And then are there tasks or kind of the work that archivists do that they're unable to do complete right now that a new system would help them with? So would a new collection management system be able to pull from these systems? Or can we get these different departments to agree on one system that all this information is in one place? Uh, Definitely something that is important in a way that you can help your colleagues and really share information much more easily. So how will the system solve problems? So will the CMS help, achieve institutional goals? What problems will it solve? What results will it yield? And then thinking about of those problems, prioritizing. So what's the most important problems to solve first with this system, and what can be addressed later? So sometimes, especially when you're working with requirements for any type of technology or systems, you're basically going to have a huge wish list. And I think it's really important to document everything, absolutely everything that you want a system to do, but then you're also ranking those requirements. So there's going to be some of those requirements that are just, as I said, requirements. They are mandatory. And then there's other stuff that's kind of nice to have, or, maybe that might be nice to have in the future. And having that ranking of especially the problems that you want to have solved with a system is important in making that selection process. So you've taken in all that input, but you've also been able to analyze it and think about, if we can solve 80% of the problems that this organization has, that's great. Um, and that also helps too with deciding on what systems to use, because you might find a system that can do everything, but it might be out of your budget, but you might be able to find a system that can do most of what you want it to do and to solve most of the problems that are well within the range that you're looking for to spend. So how will the system help users as well? So what will make a system be successful to be usable? How will it enhance research? Are there certain search and discovery features that you want that perhaps maybe what you're using right now won't fulfill? Um, I'm thinking again about new audiences. Students, for example, now that so many people are much more engaging with archival collections online, how can we reach those people, and who are they? Are there specific types of users that you want to tap into? I think sometimes the process of thinking about who that audience could be and making almost like avatars of really understanding those audience needs, I think is helpful in making a system that will help users. And what will the CMS do for them? So what are the research needs that you find the users always asking for, and how can this system help fulfill those needs? So how will it work with your organization? So I've seen this sometimes in past projects or in past work environments that I've been in, that there's staff members that uh, for whatever reason don't want to use a particular type of technology. And they these might be legitimate reasons or not. It doesn't really matter, but it's like, there's not 100% buy-in of people that would really be helped by using a system. So are there features that could incent them to opt into a new CMS, like that would get them excited, that would really solve their problems? Perhaps, they don't really know what those problems are, so you can really suss those out and get them excited about the possibilities of a new system. So what are those desired features? And thinking again, also, how will the CMS handle things like accessioning, deaccessioning, locations, statistics, status, and detailed descriptions? Um, As you'll see in this presentation, I do talk about technology, but I feel like it's more a thinking. I think technology in many cases is the least of an organization's problems. I think it's the organizational culture and the people and getting the backing of the system that's important. And I think I think sometimes that gets glossed over because the technology is new and shiny and exciting, but it's really important to think about, how can we use a collections management system to really benefit the people that work at your organizations, like really benefit them, make their lives easier, make their day-to-day work faster, with less errors, more efficient, more fun. Um, Sometimes more less laborious, so kind of the day-to-day or the admin things that they have to do is easier, so they can spend their time thinking about a collection or writing better descriptions or organizing an exhibition or doing kind of that doing more research into the collection, like that kind of exciting intellectual work, and that administrative work can be more automated with the system. How sustainable is the system too? So I think sometimes there's sometimes a hesitation to invest in a collections management system because technology moves so quickly. Um, and collections can move so quickly too. So a lot of times collections and users grow and change over time. So is the system flexible enough um, to to sustain the collections and users? And how will the CMS support its growth? And you're thinking about, do archivists wish to create EAD finding aids with standards? Or is there a new way of doing things that you want to experiment with? And is that system like flexible and sustainable for what you want it to do? I think it's also thinking about, what system will work for us now and how will that system grow with us 5 years from now or 10 years from now? So how much IT support is needed? Can the IT department support the CMS? Is there data storage issues? Where would the CMS be hosted? Could it, would the organization host it? Would the vendor host it? And then how would the CMS integrate with the existing IT ecosystem? So what does it look like when you take on that CMS? Does it play well with other systems? And how much time and labor will it take for it to be more seamless with what you already have? And of course, what is your budget? That's always a really important part of this piece, and that helps you determine best options. So depending on what organization you have, what your needs are, you could be looking at open source or commercial. I do advise that when you're doing that, you really want to think about what are the upfront costs, but what are the hidden costs? And I think sometimes that really gets people, because I think what looks like a low investment initially can be very expensive in the long term. So you want to definitely wrap your head about what that looks like. And then with that tied to the budget, what are the measures of success and also the measures of value? So that for this money being expended, what are you actually getting out of it? Are there updates? Are there expansions or modules? Or is there a new version coming out? Or, is there support or tutorials for the system? What are you actually getting within this budget? So you want to compile and refine your findings. So you want to prioritize your results. So with the requirements, you're thinking about, what's mandatory, what's nice to have, what's not applicable. I think as you're gathering your requirements, it's almost like you're in a way of being non-judgmental, because you really want to see what people want and what you think the capacities are. And then you can go back and really think about, of the requirements, what are the things that we will not budge at? And what are the things that, depending on, let's say, our budget or our phased rollout of this system, like what are we looking for? And then there's some requirements that may be important to certain segments of the organization, but maybe are deal breakers for a particular type of software you're looking for. And then I think it's also important too to create a weighted feature checklist. So thinking about of those requirements, again, weighting those things. So you have something, especially when you're going into, let's say, a vendor showcase where they're showing you the system, you're being able to be more objective about the features by weighting them and really thinking and agreeing on, what's important. So of course, with anything in life, there's going to be compromises that you make, but you only want to compromise on the low priority requirements. So again, there's going to be some requirements that you don't really care about, and there's going to be things that you must have, and you should not be compromising on what you must have. And then you can also think about, what approach will allow for needs to be considered later. So, right now you might have a particular set of features or requirements that are mandatory, and that might change over time. So is there a way, as that changes, that there's some flexibility there that you might be able to add new parts of the system, another module, another feature perhaps that you're not getting initially, that there's some flexibility there. So the system grows as you grow. So there's this great discovery period of like information gathering. So once you have the requirements, you can issue a request for proposal to vendors. And RFP is used to purchase services through a competitive process. And then it lets vendors know, okay, these are, we want to, review and buy software. So these are our requirements, let us know if you can meet them. And it's important too because you get a really wide range of information. And I think it's always good to talk to people, to test things out, to just be really exploratory and spend some time in this process of really getting to know what's out there. I mean, you've already invested time in figuring out what those requirements are. So, spend some time in seeing, what the possibilities are and opportunities for you. So then you also have a better understanding of requirements. So when you know your requirements, you can think about, okay, what do you do well? What does the organization do well? What does the organization need improvement with? And perhaps this software can help with those improvements. I think, software, again, as I said, technology is the easy part, the people are the hard part. I think that a new piece of software is not going to solve all problems, especially long-term problems within the organization. They can certainly help. And I think the implementation process is important because it's really an opportunity to change workflows and ways of doing things. And it in some ways kind of pushes and prods people to think in new ways. And I think it could be a really great opportunity to improve things because it kind of forces you to do things in a new way. And I think that's really important because so much of a lot of archival work can be pretty routine, where processing sometimes looks the same or similarly. And so thinking about implementing a new system can really help push a new way of thinking and a fresh perspective on the work that you do.
All right, thank you, Margot. Obviously, there are a lot to think about when it comes to requirements and implementing a system, and we know that collections are important to you. And that is why sometimes change is important, especially when it comes to a system that will help you and your needs. Margot did, in fact, cover a lot of things here to help you think about your collection management system requirements, from getting a buy-in from different stakeholders to thinking about how we work with these collections to help you as an archivist. So if you'd like to revisit this webinar, it will be available on our website. And if you do have any questions to Margot, especially anything in regards to the topics she mentioned or anything that resonated with you, go to her website, margotnote.com, or you can send her an email, margot@margotnote.com. Also, we are always doing some promotions and incentives. If you'd like to know more about Archivera or our collection management system or have any questions about that, we also we'll be happy to tell you how it works as well and the requirements that we have. contact us at 1604-278-6717 or send us an email, sales@lucidea.com. And on behalf of Lucidea, thank you for joining us for today's presentation. We look forward to speaking with you sometime soon. Bye for now.